The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, figuring they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
I know I'm probably speaking to a small audience here, but anybody who has played football at any level knows about practicing in August. And back in the day, they used to do two-a-days. Weather like this? We never had this. Mid-70s in late August? We'll take it. It's probably going to get hot again, but those dog days of dragging through practice and the stupidity back in the 70s of limiting water breaks, so yeah, how stupid that was. But even with as much water as you want, man, it's tough to drag through football practice when it's 100 degrees, and we're not even close. It's just been very, very pleasant the last couple of days. And we're going to take it, right? Of course we're going to take it. But I'm not a weatherman, though I can tell you which way the wind is blowing. There are a number of things to get to today. There was a very good story in the Post by Sam Fortier about the hits that Jayden Daniels took in college and whether or not he can protect himself in the NFL. I think that is the number one issue right now. The other issues, so far, so good. I mean, he's looked very poised. Everything we've heard about him in training camp has been positive. I think he's well suited to go into the opening game next month. And, he'll have some struggles, but I think he's got a chance to be an excellent player. The issue is, can he stay on the field for 17 games? And the deep dive that Fortier has him looking into the numbers, and they're not as scary as you might think. But if you go to YouTube, you can find a video of all the vicious hits he took. And amazingly, he stayed on his feet. And one of the things, and we'll get into this in a little while, is his weight. This is really interesting because when you watch him play, that was my first thought the first time I saw him in uniform, not on the practice field because it's more difficult to tell. But when he's in a full uniform, he really does look slender. Yet he weighs 210 pounds. Lamar Jackson, who's a great runner, two-time MVP, has played as high as 230. Last year, he dropped his weight down to 210, and this year he's playing at 205. So who would have thought that Lamar Jackson plays at a lower weight than Jayden Daniels? And Lamar Jackson, yes, he did have some injury problems 2 years previous, although he stayed healthy last year. And the question is, can they get over the hump? Can they win the AFC Championship game, which they lost at home this past year? But in terms of size, Jayden Daniels, not all that small, relatively speaking. He's a little taller than Lamar, but not much. I think Lamar is between 6'2 and 6'3, and Daniels is 6'4. So, sometimes these heights and weights can be a little bit deceiving, and the question is, does he know how to protect himself? Does he know how to slide? He says he does not practice sliding, which if you watched Hard Knocks, you saw that they actually have a slip and slide. Like they're using that to teach their quarterbacks to slide, and Caleb Williams has been able to do that. He can run as well as throw. This is the modern quarterback. You got to be able really to do both these days. I don't think there are too many guys in the league who don't run well as throw. But the ability to get down to avoid the big hit, that's a big thing. So we'll get to that in a little bit. A little broadcasting news here, and wasn't surprised about this, that we heard, was it last week, that RG3 and Sam Ponder both were, well, they call it, I don't know, laid off, fired, whatever you want to say. Both of them have time left on their contracts. RG3, this is just, he hasn't said anything about it yet. He says he will say it at some point. My feeling is he tried to make it too much about himself and doesn't play well with others, as we found out here. They gave him some really big jobs. He was part of the Monday Night Countdown crew. He was also doing a lot of college football. It was assumed that he was going to stay with college football, but they released him from that as well. And we'll see what happens with his deal because even though he's being paid, he can't work for anybody else. And that may be a bigger hindrance to him than anything else, and he may come to a settlement with them and try to get on with another network. The issue with Sam Ponder, while nobody has said anything, and ESPN won't, There's reason to believe that she was pushed out because of some things that she'd put out on social media about transgender athletes, and that may have been that. So what happens at ESPN is whenever they have a tense situation, they bring in the human fire hose, and his name is Mike Greenberg. This huge dust-up with the NBA Countdown show with Maria Taylor, who had been the host, and if you remember this, during the pandemic, Rachel Nichols, who was working as a correspondent for the show, was on a Zoom call that was left open when she didn't know it, and she was talking on the phone. I think she was talking to LeBron's agent, and was talking about Maria Taylor in a way that the reason that she got that job was because she was African American. That was the implication. So that led to a lot of tension between the two of them, and they wouldn't talk. And eventually, both of them were Maria Taylor left. She went to NBC, and Rachel Nichols was forced out at ESPN. And so, who do they bring in to calm things down? Why, it's good old Mike Greenberg. And Greenberg did the show for a couple of years. Malika Andrews, who's, I think, excellent and is a rising star and is still like in her 20s. Can't believe how good she is on television. She's taken over that show, and I think she'll do that for a long time. She's really had a nice association with the NBA, and Greenberg goes back to hosting the morning show that he's been doing, Get Up, and also occasionally the radio show. He's hardly ever on it, as you know, if you listen at noon here on ESPN 630. But I would assume he's going to drop the radio at least, and I wonder if he's going to do Get Up every day and still host the Countdown show on Sunday. I think at 57, that might be the future for him. And realize this, that ESPN is going to produce the Super Bowl after the 2026 season. So 3 more years, and ESPN will televise the Super Bowl, and to be hosting the pregame and I guess postgame show, that will be a big deal for him when that happens. So just interesting to watch what happens at ESPN. I have no real issue with Mike Greenberg. I just find him to be very vanilla, and he obviously makes management feel very safe. My choice would have been Scott Van Pelt, who I think has great personality, does a great job on the Monday Night Countdown show, and I think this being a bigger job, this would have been a promotion that would have made some sense. But that's the deal. The rest of the crew, Teddy Bruschi, Randy Moss, Rex Ryan, Adam Schefter, and Alex Smith, and he does Get Up work with Ryan anyway. I think Bruschi's on the show from time to time, and Schefter's always on. He's on 24 hours a day pretty much on ESPN. So that's the deal, and Mike Greenberg will be your new host when the regular season rolls out. I guess it's September the 8th. Meantime, we got some interesting stuff going on between Tua Tagovailoa and his former head coach, Brian Flores. We played this yesterday. In case you're not familiar with this, Tua was on the Dan Le Batard show. And it was one of these, sit-down type of things. It wasn't like a phone interview or anything like that. It was Le Batard and his crew sitting on a couch, and maybe Tua got a little bit too comfortable, but said this about the way he's coached now by Mike McDaniel versus the way he was coached his first 2 years in the NFL by Brian Flores, who was fired with a pretty good record. And I don't know where his lawsuit stands right now, but he did file a racial discrimination suit against the league. He's now the defensive coordinator with the Vikings, and we'll get his reaction to what Tua said in a moment. But this was Tua on Monday on the Le Batard show, talking about the way he was coached by Brian Flores versus the way he's coached now, and why, as he says here, Flores was a terrible person.
To put it in simplest terms, if you woke up every morning and I told you you suck at what you did, that you don't belong doing what you do, that you shouldn't be here, that this guy should be here, that you haven't earned this right, and then you have somebody else come in and tell you, dude, you are the best fit for this. Like, you are accurate, you are the best whatever, you are this, you are that. Like, how would it make you feel listening to one or the other? You see what I'm saying? And then you hear it, regardless of what it is, the good or the bad. And you hear it more and more. You start to actually believe that. I don't care who you are. You could be the president of the United States. You have a terrible person that's telling you things that you don't want to hear, or that you probably shouldn't be hearing. you're going to start to believe that about yourself. And so that's sort of like what ended up happening. And it was, I mean, it's basically been, 2 years of training that out of not just me, but, a couple of the guys as well that have been here since my rookie year all the way till now.
Those who have coached will tell you this. You have 53 players. You pretty much have to coach them 53 different ways. Some guys respond well to getting a kick in the butt, and some respond better to getting an arm around the shoulder. Apparently, for Tua, he likes it better that he has his arm around his shoulder. Now, these were the comments that he made on Monday. Yesterday, Flores responded, and he could have said, that's issues that are in the past. I'll, at some point, talk it out with Tua. He was somewhat apologetic about this, and even said that he says, I think there are things that I could do better for sure. I've grown in that way. I've tried to apply the things that I could do better to the things that I've learned over the last 2 to 3 years. Well, last 2 or 3 years would include some time in Miami, and this is more of what he said at what was a lengthy news conference. Defensive coordinators don't usually speak for this long. This was a 17-minute news conference yesterday in Minnesota.
Specific to the comments that were made by Tua, I just want to say, look, I'm happy, genuinely happy, genuinely happy for the success that Tua's had, and I really wish him nothing but the best. And I think player relationships are very important to me. I think that's kind of the foundation of coaching. I got into coaching because I was impacted as a young guy by my high school coaches, my college coaches, by going all the way to Pop Warner. I got into coaching because I want to make that same kind of impact, positive impact, pour into young people, help them become, as KO says all the time, the best versions of themselves. And that's really my goal always in coaching. So I wish nothing but the best to Tua.
So he took the high road, and I don't really quibble with anything he said or how he handled it. I think that's probably about as well as you can do with that situation. Now, it's unclear whether they've talked, but clearly, Tua likes playing with Mike McDaniel better than Brian Flores. Now, he's now put some weight on himself that he's now got his coach that he likes, and it's like, okay, you didn't have a coach that you liked for your first 2 years. Now you like Mike McDaniel. Start performing at the level for which you were being paid now, because he now has that contract extension that quarterbacks get, which puts them in the range of about $50 million a year. So if you're being paid at that level and you now have the coach that you want, you got to come through. You put probably even more pressure on yourself with the way you've handled that. So that's something to look to. And as I said yesterday, Flores is a defensive guy, and defensive guys tend to coach, at least from my observation, a little bit differently than offensive guys. I covered the Bill Parcells Giants team. Parcells was a defensive guy, and that's kind of how he coached his team. And he used to say some things to Phil Simms that I'm sure Flores said to Tua Tagovailoa over the years. Phil Simms wound up winning a Super Bowl MVP. I think he completed like 21 of 23 passes in that game. He was that good. And marginal Hall of Famer. That's how well he played. With Tom Landry, he coached both offense and defense and was kind of distant from everybody. And then Joe Gibbs was an offensive guy, and I'm sure he did have a couple of legendary blow-ups, but he was an arm around your shoulder guy and took 3 different teams to Super Bowls with 3 different quarterbacks, none of whom are going to be in the Hall of Fame. So, you can look at that a variety of ways. Speculation on what the Commanders are going to do this year. It's that time of year. Yesterday on Pro Football Talk, Mike Florio and Chris Sims on the expectations for the Commanders this year and how they may benefit from being under the radar.
They fall into that category of team that everyone is going to overlook and assume is going to be an also-ran. And if they can string together some wins in anonymity, they can be in the mix late in the year. It's kind of a Texans vibe. We mentioned that yesterday. Both the Bears and the Commanders have that possible Texans vibe this year where they can just kind of go about their business. There is a Monday night game fairly early in the year, But, a lot of these games are just going to be plugging along. And when they get to their bye week 14, those last 4 games, not entirely impossible. Maybe they'll be in striking distance for a late run at a playoff berth, because they haven't been awful. They just haven't been on the right side of the teams that get to the postseason.
Yeah, no, Ron Rivera, they had some years there where they probably exceeded expectations, and of course, the biggest problem has been the quarterback there, nonetheless. And yeah, I don't know if the team is actually as good as it was a few years ago when they went to the playoffs with Heineke and all of that. Right? They're a little bit in retool, rebuild mode. I have a little more of the Texans feeling with the Bears than the Commanders. I do. But nonetheless, I hear what you're saying, and there is potential here for them to be explosive on offense and him do some big things. I just wonder if there's going to be too much pressure on him. Can they protect well enough? Can they run the ball a little bit to take a little pressure on him? And the defense, yeah, without those 2 guys on the edge and all of that, and some other questionable positions, I just wonder how good they're going to be over there too.
One of the ingredients that the Bears definitely don't have, the Texans had last year, is nobody expected anything.
Yeah, that's
right.
With
the Bears, you can look at it and say, okay, they could be something.
Right.
And you can look at the Commanders and say, okay, it could fall together a certain way, and maybe they could be something. Last year, even at this point of the season, there was nothing that we saw or heard about in the preseason that made us think, oh, hey, Texans are going to go on a tear. Texans are going to end up winning the division. Texans are going to blow out the Browns in the wild card round and then give the Ravens everything they can handle for the first half of a divisional game. We never would have expected that a year ago, which the NFL loves that storyline when that happens, because that's what reels in. That's what re-engages every fan base, because you can delude yourself into thinking, and it's not delusional to think maybe everything falls right this year for us, and it changes everything for the future. That's what's happened to the Texans.
Like Washington.
Go back to something.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, no, you do this. You do this. Because we got some time to kill, and I wanted to raise something. But
okay,
go ahead.
I wanted to just fun talk, right? Barstool talk here a little bit of just about football in general. Washington, though, okay, you had to put money on it, right? Are you gonna make them 2 in the division? 3, 4, right? I mean, I would certainly make
3.
them 3, right? I mean, maybe 4. I think the Giants
3, but maybe 2.
Okay.
3, but maybe 2, because I think with the Cowboys, I don't know what they're going to do.
You don't know what to expect there.
And just because you think that Philadelphia is the best team in the division doesn't mean that they're going to perform that way. And I think what happened at the end of the season to them, the collapse, that's going to be something to watch, whether that continues into this year, whether those problems are solved, that Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni may be butting heads, all those things. That just because they have the most talent and they were in the Super Bowl 2 years ago doesn't mean that things will go well this year. So the assumption that Philadelphia is going to win the division, we'll see. Dallas, can the Commanders win it? Well, probably not. But, if everything falls into place like it did with Houston and C.J. Stroud, and Daniels is that good. And I also would disagree a little bit with Sims there, who said the biggest problem has been quarterback. Yeah, that's a problem, but the biggest problem has been ownership. And they now have a season, an off season, a real off season to put the structure in place that they need to be a successful organization. Don't forget that Josh Harris didn't take over as owner of the team until a week before training camp. So with a full year to get things right, let's see. Can they replicate what Houston did last year? Probably not. But it's not out of the question that they could have a successful season. And I think for them, a successful season would be somewhere between 7 and 9 wins. If they can get to that level, who knows? With the way things go in the NFL, they won't get in with 7, but 8 or 9 might slip them into the playoffs. You just never know. Coming up, Tom Brady took off on the way quarterbacks are being used these days, especially ones that come right out of college and step on the field. He talked about that over the weekend, I guess, at Fanatics, And yesterday, Diana Russini, who covers the NFL for The Athletic, discussed it with Dan Patrick, who believes that Brady's a little bit off base on that. We'll get to that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
We now have Bram Weinstein at 11 o'clock every day. Tony Kornheiser now 2 o'clock, although I don't think we'll have a show today because the Orioles are playing this afternoon at 1 o'clock as they close out their series against the Mets. We'll do Orioles preview at 10:30 this morning. James McCann was on the MLB Network yesterday, and he played with the Mets in New York. The team is there, and they have their studios there, so it's very convenient for him to go in. And he said some things about playing catcher, which were so insightful. He'll have his choice once he's finished playing. Is he a big enough name to become a broadcaster? Maybe not, but he's really good at explaining things. And he did say in the interview that he wants to be a manager. And when you listen to this, you'll understand that he's got a real handle on how the game is played and the psychology that goes into it and all those sort of things. Some more football here. Tom Brady, if you missed this was over the weekend at Fanatics. He did a lengthy interview with Stephen A. Smith and said this about the quarterback position. Now, you can take this with a grain of salt in that here's a guy who came in the NFL almost 25 years ago and, has probably that mentality like, kind of like Michael Jordan had, like, everybody else sucks, but, the competitor that he was and continued to be into his 40s is amazing. And I'll tell you something, if he's this good when he goes into the booth for Fox, that's going to be awesome. Most guys are not this honest and not this, critical, really. And this is what Brady said about the quarterback position now as you have now rookies stepping on the field, which still did happen in his day, but not with much success. And now more and more evidence, by C.J. Stroud last year that you can step on the field as a rookie and be successful. And Brady does not think that's a good idea.
There used to be college programs. Now there are college teams. You're no longer learning a program, you're learning a playbook. And the program is ultimately, like at Michigan, for me, that was a pro-style program. 5 years I got to learn how to drop back pass, to read defenses, to read coverages, to be coached. I had to learn from being 7th quarterback on the depth chart to moving up to 3rd to ultimately being a starter. I had to learn all those things in college. That was development. Then I went to New England, and I was developed by Coach Belichick and the offensive staff there. I didn't start my first year. I think it's just a tragedy that we're forcing these rookies to play early. But the reality is the only reason why they are is because we dumbed the game down, which has allowed them to play. It used to be thought of at a higher level. We used to spend hours and hours in the offseason and training camp trying to be a little bit better than next year. But I think what happens is it discourages the coaches from going to deep levels because they realize the players don't have the opportunity to go to a deep level, so they're just going to teach them where they're at.
All right, 2 takeaways. The word tragedy that he used, that might be a little bit severe. And I would wonder how Jayden Daniels would take that, given that he's been going into the facility at 5 o'clock in the morning to study as much tape as he can and working on things. And hasn't been always the case with rookie quarterbacks, especially here. We've seen that. And here's a guy who has taken the mental part of the game very seriously, understanding that, having been a college player like Brady was 5 years, those 2 different programs, but he played 5 years. He played at a high level in both programs, especially the second time with LSU, and made this huge jump from his junior year to his senior year. And he has put in the time and has been able to do that. So I'm more in line with what Dan Patrick said yesterday on his show as he talked to Diana Russini of The Athletic, taking issue with some of the things that Brady said.
Seems like a little bit of hyperbole with the tragedy word there, but as you've mentioned, Jayden Daniels, Bo Nix, Caleb Williams, they've been quarterbacks with 2 different universities, 2 different offenses, and they played upwards of 45 to 60 games. I don't, and they've gotten their money, NIL. It feels like they're more pro-ready than they've ever been. And I don't know if Tom is just thinking what it was like when he was 7th string quarterback in New England and moved up to be the 3rd string and then eventually the starter. But Is it a tragedy of what we're doing with rookie quarterbacks?
Yeah, my takeaway from listening to Tom specifically talking on the topic was more his experience of playing the position and the challenges it brings. And it was almost like he was admitting that this is a tall task. This is hard. I had to go through this, this, and this. And I think it's also human nature. We tend to reflect back on our own experiences, and you sort of become the old man in the room. Not that I'm calling Tom old, but the way he reflects on his career may not be exactly the way the game is now. And I'll call them my football dads, the men that I've been around all these years that have helped me understand this game and get better as a reporter covering it. They would probably, most of them, the majority of them, would probably side with a Tom Brady in this respect, because there is definitely value to sitting. I mean, everyone uses the example because it's the best example, and that's Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City, having that time to sit and watch and learn and grow. Despite the fact that, if you recall, we would hear during the season, during practices, from players chatting behind Alex Smith's back, I guess, how good Patrick Mahomes was, that he was already blowing them away. But just getting that time to adjust and learn. I spoke to Jordan Love on Friday. It was such a great conversation about that first year. Not just the hype around him, the fact that he became this controversial quarterback to join the Green Bay Packers, knowing that Aaron Rodgers was obviously the starter and the Green Bay Packers did what they did at the time, the drama surrounding that. Forget that. He did talk about it, but forget that. For what I want to talk about, though, is his ability to play in the NFL at that time. And I joked with him. I said, let's pull some film of you from your practices that year. He's like, oh my God, please don't. Please. I don't even know who that guy is. I don't know who he is. And I appreciated how candid he was about it, and obviously very confident in what he is and who he is now, to go, yeah, I stunk. I was not good. And look, I can remember back Jordan's first and second year talking to people in Green Bay, being like, yep, we messed up. He ain't the guy. Well, guess who's the guy now? Guess who's blowing coaches away? Guess who's understanding the offense? Really? Guess who is the clear leader on the field when you're watching the Packers? And just from the way he conducts himself, and just his understanding of what his job is now. And I think him getting this deal done was the best for his overall confidence. And I felt it too, just talking to him. So really, to go back to your question about Brady, I do think times have changed. And it's great that this quarterback crop, we're going to truly see it. We're going to be able to see some of these guys that are to sit and some of these guys that are going to play, and more are going to be playing. Obviously, as you pointed out, we got Caleb and Jayden. I think JJ McCarthy had a really good shot there before he got hurt. I was with Minnesota the day that news came out. That was not fun. Coach was heartbroken about it. The whole team was. You felt it. They just felt for the kid, because I do think the plan was to play Sam, but JJ was making a strong case to get in there. And then now you have Bo Nix here, who seems like he won this job fair and square.
That's Diana Russini with Dan Patrick on the force feeding of quarterbacks. Brady not a fan of it. Brady is a little different with him. He was a 6th round pick. So there was no reason to play him. And Drew Bledsoe had been the number one pick of the draft. He'd already taken that team to a Super Bowl. Brady was not going to play, and he wouldn't have played in his second year if Bledsoe didn't get hurt. If Bledsoe stays healthy, it would have been very interesting to track the career of Tom Brady. Eventually, he would have gotten his chance to play, and maybe Belichick would have seen enough of him to maybe trade away Bledsoe at some point. But, the circumstances that turned him from a forgotten guy, the number 199 in the draft, to a Super Bowl hero and the best player in the game are kind of random. And to look at what happens now with quarterbacks, some flame out. As bad as it ended for RG3, it began great. If you were around here in 2012, there was nothing more exciting than their run to the playoffs that year. That was incredible. And his whole season, even though they lost games at the beginning of the year, he was spectacular. So Brady, some of that is, get off my lawn, and there is some validity to it. And as a fan, he can talk about dumbing down the game, but the game is exciting. These games are great. The playoff games are fabulous. The Super Bowl was great. We want entertainment, Tom. That's really what a lot of this is about. So, but I do like his opinions. It's good to have strong opinions, and I'll be interested to see how good he is on television analyzing games, and I'll be interested to see how long he does it, because even though he's going to fly on a private plane, the grind of a season is a little bit different, especially if he wants to do it the proper way. If he's going to jet in day of the game, plop himself down, spew some opinions, get back on his private jet and leave, okay, we'll see how long that lasts. But the reason that Steve Young turned these jobs down, and Steve Young, I think, would have been great at this if he wanted to do it, he said it takes up too much time. He said you got to leave on Friday to go watch practice. Then you talk to the coaches on Saturday. Sometimes you even have to leave on Thursday to get there in time for the Friday morning meetings. And then you do the game and you jet out after the game. I mean, it's not something he's involved in other things. Brady, we'll see how he adapts to that. Coming up, we'll hear from Dan Quinn on the sliding of Jayden Daniels, and take a look at what Sam Fortier has written about that. And also, yesterday, Kirk Cousins was on the Rich Eisen show saying, it was probably the best thing for me that I was drafted by the Redskins, even though they had invested so much in RG3. We'll get to that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Poland Show, ESPN 630. Oh, we're getting close. Football season is coming, and it's coming quickly. We got college football starting this weekend, this Saturday. So what are we, 3 days away from that? And then the NFL starts for real on, the 6th, right? 6th, 4th, 5th? I don't know. It's early this year because Labor Day is so early. And the Commanders will play their opener on September 8th. The final exhibition game is on Sunday night. It's at 8 o'clock against the New England Patriots, and they are treating this week just like a regular game week. So yesterday was an off day, and they get back to practice today. I don't know how much they're going to install in terms of preparation for New England. I think they're really looking ahead to the opener. But, they got to look at some players who are on the bubble right now. Question is, will Jayden Daniels play a couple of series in that, or have they seen enough? I think they probably have. I think they're going to play it safe and not play him against the Patriots. But we'll find out maybe more later in the week. Dan Quinn, he doesn't seem to be as secretive as Ron Rivera is. Rivera used to do this thing with injuries. He would talk to the media every Monday. That's a requirement for head coaches. And there would always be questions about injuries from the day before. And so he would say, I didn't talk to the trainer before I talked to you. I'm going to talk to him afterwards, meaning that would buy him some extra time because Tuesday's an off day, no availability. So you really wouldn't find out much about injuries until Wednesday. Quinn doesn't seem to be that tight, doesn't seem to do things that way. But regular season hasn't started, and we haven't been able to find out that. I went through these cuts from yesterday, the audio from the weekend with the Commanders playing the Dolphins, and it leads into a very long and detailed story by Sam Fortier in the Post today about Jayden Daniels protecting himself. The headline is "The Art of Self-Preservation. An analysis of more than 3,600 snaps shows Daniels isn't overly reckless, but the Commanders expect their prize rookie to make smart decisions." And if you watched the exhibition game on Saturday night in Miami, you saw that Jayden Daniels didn't slide during a 13-yard run, and there's Dan Quinn on the sidelines going, "Get down, get down, get down." And this is how Quinn described what happened as he watched that play and how he felt about Daniels and the way he handled it.
Double secret probation he is on, all right? And but no, for him, I thought he had another really good outing, honestly. I don't know passing-wise what it was, but the accuracy, the decision-making of where to go, he really is a unique competitor. And but yes, he was definitely in trouble again with the head coach.
You going from Top Gun to Animal House?
That's exactly right. So he does not have a 0.0. I will absolutely assure you of that. But did that come out on the TV that I was telling him to slide or get down? Is that okay? There we go.
Yeah. Now Daniels, I don't want to say he's not taking this seriously, But this is what he said about what happened on that play. And if you watch it, you see him really smiling at Quinn afterwards. This is I think a pretty serious issue. This is the Daniels take.
It's a constant battle between me and him. It's a fine line of knowing when to take your chances and when to get down. Right there, I honestly didn't think there was a lot of people by me. So after I got tackled, I went down a little bit. He's on the sideline like, get down. And so that's just our little joke that we have going on.
How do you balance that going forward, knowing when to get out of bounds or get down or just play your game?
I mean, still learning. God blessed me with a gift. So I don't want to take that away. I know that they don't want it to be taken away, but it's fine line staying healthy and longevity and stuff like that.
Is that a struggle for a guy who's got the physical gifts?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very competitive, so I want to make explosive plays, score a lot of touchdowns, things like that. So I think that's what kind of gives me my competitive side.
You know, if you got to sell out to get to the Super Bowl, that's one thing. Exhibition game, yeah, it's a part of your arsenal. It's something you're blessed with, as he says, but you don't want to see that happen. You don't want to see him go out on a hit. And if you look at the YouTube tape of the hits that he took at LSU, I don't know how many of those he could take in the NFL and stay upright for 17 weeks. This also was a little bit troubling, I thought. This was not from Saturday, but from Monday when he was named the starting quarterback and was asked this question, I believe, by Fortier.
Do you actually practice slider? Have you ever practiced sliding?
Nah, I haven't.
Nah, I haven't. Now, if you watch Hard Knocks, the Bears are doing it. They got a slip and slide there. That would seem to make sense. Commanders not doing that. Now, in this story by Fortier, he's got a quote from Cliff Kingsbury who says, he will slide. He will. We've harped on it a lot. Well, not enough for him to not kind of make a joke about it, I would think. But Fortier went deep, and he said he looked at more than 3,600 of his snaps from high school to now to see what the past could reveal about the future. He writes, last season, Daniels took 3 massive hits in his first 5 games. He got bodied with a pro wrestling move against Florida State, was speared in the ribs trying to cut back against Mississippi State, and got slammed with a breathtaking hit at Mississippi, a play that caused a fumble and drew a mighty roar from the crowd. In the 6th game, a Missouri linebacker drilled him in the back on what could have been flagged as a late hit. That's on the run. Overall, Daniels ran roughly 500 times in college. So it's 100 times a season, right? Played 5 years. Or fewer than a dozen, but on fewer than a dozen did he appear to be driving drunk, which is the way his father describes running recklessly. The huge hits overshadowed hundreds of slides, steps out of bounds, or athletic moves to lessen or avoid contact, Fortier writes. Early in his college career at Arizona State, Daniels slid often but looked uncomfortable. He was too fast for other kids to catch in high school, and in a few hundred highlights posted on Huddle, H-U-D-L, he slid just once without much grace, didn't play baseball growing up. By the time he got to LSU in 2022, he looked more comfortable sliding. That was a big help for Russell Wilson, that he was a baseball player. RG3 was not. RG3 was a straight-ahead runner. Daniels is really not. Daniels has more elusive moves. You know, RG3 was a hurdler. Daniels, I don't think, ran track, but he is very fast, and he does, have some elusive moves. But, the problem is, especially when you get to the NFL, you got to worry about the contact. In 2 seasons at LSU, Daniels was contacted, sacked, hit while throwing or hit while running 395 times, tied for 6th most of any football Bowls Division quarterback, according to True Media. He suffered several minor injuries, such as the lower back strain, a sprained ankle, and bruised ribs, though he played through them. The only one serious to knock him out was a concussion against Alabama, and that was when he was in the pocket. It wasn't sliding. Here's I thought, really was a very fascinating part of all of this. You can look at the hits, and a hit in high school is obviously going to be a lot different than it will be in the pros, for sure. And he writes, as a rookie, Daniels probably will get hit regularly. It's conservative to expect over a 17-game season he'll have at least 500 dropbacks, 50 scrambles, and 50 design runs, meaning defenders will have plenty of chances. But here's this, and the weight has been a big issue with him, right? Because, that was a big part of the combine. How much is he going to weigh? He's 6'4". Daniels is 210 pounds. That makes him one of the lightest first-round quarterbacks since 2000, and some analysts worry about his frame holding up in the NFL. Quinn said the Commanders don't need Daniels to gain weight, as other slender quarterbacks have shown. Bigger doesn't mean better. And I really wasn't aware of this, but this is a really interesting part of all of this. Baltimore's Lamar Jackson. He's listed at 6'2", so he's a couple inches shorter than Daniels. Okay. But he was 216 pounds when he played at Louisville in 2018. 4 years later, after taking a lot of sacks, he bulked up to 230 pounds to protect himself. Still got hurt, missed 5 games in 2022, including the playoffs. Last season, he signed a big contract, dropped to 215, won his second MVP. This season, he told reporters he's down to 205 and couldn't remember the last time he felt so elusive. So here's a guy who's experienced, has been through the wars in the NFL, has won 2 MVPs, Lamar Jackson, and he's playing at 205. And Daniels, yes, he's a little taller, but built different. Lamar looks, kind of stockier. He's playing at 210. So, you just kind of hope that he can protect himself. But the overall takeaway from this is, yes, he does get hit, but it's not as bad as it looks. And as his father said about playing drunk, playing with reckless abandon, it's not as much as you might have imagined, especially if you watch that YouTube video. I don't know if that puts any fears to rest, but it was a very good deep dive by Sam Fortier. And once we have like a month of the season as data on this, I think we'll have a better idea. So yesterday, Kirk Cousins showed up on the Rich Eisen show, and he said some things about his time in D.C., which we want to get to. First of all, he's coming off the torn Achilles, and they did draft Michael Penix, but curiously, they're not playing him at all in the preseason. Cousins is going to be the starter in Week 1 against Pittsburgh, and discussed his comeback yesterday with Eisen.
Feeling good. I think I turned a corner fully with the Achilles over the summer, where I could really, get back to my old self. And, it's been a good camp. I think it was really helpful during OTAs to still be able to go through the practice reps, even though I wasn't yet 100%, and was able to kind of still get the work in and get to know my teammates on the field. So, I'll keep feeling better as we go, but I feel really good. And, just kind of buying our time now here until Week 1.
Yeah, so the plan is, or you're definitely going to start Week 1? We see you out there against Pittsburgh, yeah. Kirk?
Yep. Yeah, when I injured it, they told me it was a 9-month deal, which would have taken me to August 1st. So even from the moment I went into surgery, I was expecting August 1st to kind of be the clear date. And with no setback, I always thought that was going to continue to be the case, and it really was. And they told me that really it takes until about 12 months to, I guess, fully be done. But after 9 months, you're pretty much ready to go.
Okay. Did you connect with Rodgers in any way, shape, or form to compare notes, talk about stuff?
Yeah, we spoke the day before my surgery. We spoke over the phone. He was about 8 weeks in. And so I was basically able to ask him, what had the first 8 weeks been like? What do you recommend from a, modality standpoint? What should I be doing with my time? How should I be spending my time? Very helpful conversation. And then he checked back in December, right about when he was trying to hit the practice field again. He checked back in just to see how I was doing. And so we've been able to connect a little bit. And, there's a lot of guys tear their Achilles. We got 2 or 3 on our team here. With the Falcons, I think 3 guys who have torn their Achilles and have come back and had great careers. So, that gave me hope knowing how many guys have done it and have gone on to good things.
So then obviously a new spot for you, Kirk, and new system, would you say? Or is it similar to, what is your adjustment level here?
Yeah, I think it's similar to when Kevin came to Minnesota from LA. My initial thought was, I was with Sean McVay. Kevin's been with Sean McVay. So, we should be speaking the same language when he arrives. Little did I know how much changes over the years when I wasn't with Sean, because Sean's such a great football mind, it was constantly evolving. And so with Kevin, I felt like I was kind of starting over, learning a lot of new, good stuff, but stuff I hadn't done with Sean from 5 or 6 years earlier. And I think some of that too now with Zach. You know, it was a similar system. Kevin and Zach were together when they won the Super Bowl after the 21 season. But in just those 2 years, you know, Kevin had unique ideas in Minnesota, and with the Rams, Zach and Sean had unique ideas, and they kind of went their separate ways. And so now we're kind of reconvening after 2 years saying, hey, here's what I did in Minnesota. Here's what you did in LA. You know, and how can we, I wouldn't say meet in the middle, but how can we kind of combine the best of the two to do what we want to do this fall?
And then obviously, you know, you choosing the Falcons and you landing there and you being there. And, you know, we all saw what happened on draft night with them choosing a guy who they're already considering as your successor right now, depending on timing and things of that nature. What has Raheem Morris told you about Michael Penix's role and yours within it, Kirk?
Yeah, I think I think his message to me was, hey, we would like to think that we're not going to be picking very high in the years to come. You know, hopefully we can have the kind of seasons we all want to have, where we're not going to have the chance to pick high and get a quarterback down the road. So we kind of need to get ahead of it now. But, you know, the message to me was just, you know, nothing changes for you. Just go to work and do your job. And honestly, Rich, it reminds me of when I went to Washington, and I thought one thing about what would happen there, and then it ended up being very different. And so I learned a long time ago not to presume something, to just understand that this league, you know, every year is a long year and anything can happen, and just go out each day and work as hard as you can. I remember too, when I was a freshman at Michigan State and Nick Foles and I came in the same class, and I kind of felt like it was maybe a dead end for me because of Nick Foles and the high school career he had for us to be there together at Michigan State. But it all worked out. We both ended up having good college careers. You know, Nick's become a Super Bowl MVP. So, you know, I think there's always room for a good quarterback, and I think that's true for both me and Mike.
So are you saying in that analogy, like you're in the role of, if you will, RG3, where the franchise expends a lot of capital to bring you in, and then somebody else is brought in, and Penix is in the role of Kirk Cousins in that analogy?
I don't know if Penix was drafted 102nd overall on the third day of the draft, then maybe there'd be some similarities.
I'm not talking about actual draft order. You know what I mean? I'm just
I think going in the top 10 is a little different, but yeah, we you know, I think we both know that this NFL career is a marathon, not a sprint. You know, Mike's been through a lot, you know, through his 6 years at, you know, Indiana, then at UW. He's been through injuries. He's had to fight through a lot. So, you know, my story, his story, we both know that this journey takes a lot, and it goes every which way. And you just take it one day at a time and keep putting good things on tape, you know, playing well when you get the chance, and believe that if you do that, you know, good things are in store, and we can win a lot of games, and we can both, you know, have great careers.
So that's part one with Kirk Cousins and Rich Eisen. Now realize this, it's a lot different than the RG3 Kirk Cousins situation in 2012. Cousins was a rookie. RG3 was a rookie. And immediately they were like, whoa, what are they doing taking Kirk Cousins in the fourth round? Are they trying to undermine Robert Griffin? You know, in this case, Cousins has been around. He's been around the block. He's going into his 13th year. Wow. So he's not going to be, you know, concerned about the drafting of Penix. And, you know, he understands how this works. And I guess the feeling of the Falcons is they'll see how it goes for a couple of years here by that time. And I guess, you know, if you look at the Green Bay model for 3 years, maybe it works that way with them, that Cousins plays 3 years as the starter in Atlanta, and then they're ready to transition to Penix, and either Cousins retires after what would be, a 15-year career? Yeah. 15 years is a long time, or goes and plays someplace else, you know, for a couple of years or 3 years, however it works. But that might be the case. And RG3 was so insecure that they had to name him the starting quarterback at the rookie minicamp. This is totally different. This is old veteran versus a guy who's, you know, coming in wanting to learn the ropes. Now, Penix has been a college player for 6 years because of injuries, and he played at 2 schools, played in Indiana, took some medical red shirts there, and then goes to Washington, where his career really bloomed and got to the point where he was a first-round pick. So it's different. As for the history of Cousins, and this was interesting to me, it's some of maybe what you've heard before, but more detail on this. Here's Cousins saying that because he wound up in Washington with a team that had their quarterback of the future in RG3 and the way things all played out, it may have played out for the best for him. Here's him describing to Eisen about how it felt when the Redskins drafted him in the 4th round after already taking RG3 at number 2.
You know, I tell people that of 32 teams that were picking that day, I would have told you Washington was the 32nd most likely to take me. It was a head scratcher. That moment where you would normally be celebrating with everybody in your family room, it was the opposite. It was just kind of a low energy surprise. I guess I'm going to Washington. Feels like a dead end kind of a thing. So obviously it all worked out. It took a little longer than I would have wanted to have it all kind of work out. But you know, certainly this NFL career has been an interesting journey, and it started with going to Washington.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, you're entering year 13 now after 6 years in Washington and 6 in Minnesota. And the 6 years in Washington, you had to really earn everything that you got. As well, opportunities, and then contractually as well. So I guess, like, just looking back then and informing you now, how were you able to make the most of what you got, not knowing when you were going to get it, Kirk?
Well, it was a major blessing to go to Washington. I did not know it at the time. I don't think too many people in the league knew it at the time. But to go into a building with Mike Shanahan as the head coach, Kyle Shanahan as the play caller, Sean McVay's down the hall as the tight end coach, Matt LaFleur is my day-to-day contact as the quarterback coach, Mike McDaniel's the low-level assistant basically helping out. I remember Raheem was the DB coach, but those guys, the guys I all named, when meetings would end in the spring and there was kind of some open time in the afternoons, everybody would kind of make their way to the quarterback room. And I knew if I just kind of hung around in the quarterback room, there would be some unbelievable football discussions going on from a bunch of young guys who weren't much older than me. And I guess I assumed that's how every NFL meeting room was, but I learned that was the exception, not the norm. So to be indoctrinated into pro football in that environment, it paid dividends immediately in my development as a young player, which is such a big part of having a successful career is do you get off to the right start? But then to this day, I mean, my head coach today was one of those guys. So, you know, it was a major blessing to end up there, even though in my, you know, limited perspective, I thought it was a dead end.
So McDaniel was getting you coffee? Is that what he was doing back in the day, Kirk?
He wasn't getting me coffee, but I'm confident he was getting somebody coffee. And his office was pretty much like a closet. And, you know, and he worked his way up in my years there. He ended up being receiver coach. But there's no doubt that, you know, he was printing stuff and going to the copy machines and, you know, getting call sheets made for Kyle and, you know, the basic quality control stuff. But he also knew football really well. We would have some really good discussions off to the side, you know, during practice. So just so grateful that I got to cross. And I told Mike that when I saw him, you know, we practiced against the Dolphins last week and post game after our preseason game, went out and shook his hand and just told him, you know, how much I appreciated his impact on my career and how much I, you know, respect him and am not surprised of his success as a head coach.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I don't know if you saw what Tua is saying, and I know this is not your table, but Tua talking about the power of a coach believing in you, you know, and saying that. And that's been a big topic of discussion in our media world over the last 24 hours. And I'm wondering, could you give voice to that and who those guys
could
are?
I ever?
Please, go for it.
I absolutely can. You know, it never really was in the culture at some of the places I've been to, like, you know, really praise you or tell you where you stand. But when I got to Washington, I remember I got motioned into the head coach's office by the assistant to the head coach. And I thought, oh, no, I'm in trouble. And this was after, you know, 7 or 8 weeks of the spring practices. And Mike Shanahan said, just sit down, Kirk. And I thought, oh, you know, here, I can't even go to the summer break without getting in trouble. And he said, Kirk, I just want to let you know that, you know, what you've done this spring has been really impressive. I think you're doing a great job with your reads, your progressions, your throws. Really proud of you. Everything we thought we were getting when we drafted you, we believe we're getting. Just wanted to let you know that and give you that feedback that we're really excited and we think you have a high ceiling and da-da-da. And he said, you're good to go. And I thought it was like a prank or something because I was just not used to that in my football upbringing. But I quickly learned that staff, that culture was to give you that feedback. And that still permeates to this day with Raheem. He's a cheerful coach. He enjoys coming to work, and it reflects in the way he treats people and talks to people. And so I can agree with what Tua said. I remember Mike McDaniel gave me a book when I went home for that summer break. He said, go read the book, Talent is Overrated. And again, hadn't had coaches who recommended books for me to read in my coming up. But Mike recommended that book. I read it, learned about what it means to have deliberate practice from that book. And to this day, when I practiced against the Dolphins, I said, hey, Mike, thanks for recommending that book. Deliberate practice kind of changed my life and changed the course of my career. And Mike said, yeah, when I recommended you read the book, I didn't realize you were going to take it to heart that much and live it out for the next decade. So those coaches continue to have a huge impact on my career.
That's Kirk Cousins yesterday with Rich Eisen. Now, I hadn't really thought of it in these terms, but, you play the what-if game a lot. The drafting of RG3, as badly as it ended between Mike Shanahan and Griffin, with him putting him on the bench for the last 3 games of their run together, he was not opposed to moving up to take him. He understood the talent that he had, and they thought that they could use this offense that they used with him and transition him to a pro offense. Unfortunately, the narcissist and the way RG3 operates, they couldn't do that because he decided he wanted to instantly become Aaron Rodgers and wasn't equipped to do that, and then undermine the coach with the help of the owner, and everything blew up. But if this had been a well-run organization like it seems to be now, Mike Shanahan and that staff, which now populates the league and has regular participants in the Super Bowl, including his son, who's been there twice, and Sean McVay, who's been there twice, winning one, and others like Kevin O'Connell, who is Cousins' last coach with the Minnesota Vikings, Raheem Morris, who was all those guys on the staff. My God, the staff that he put together. If Snyder wouldn't have meddled, maybe RG3 could have developed with a coach who would have said to him, hey, I'm the coach here. We're going to decide what to do. Or, he just traded him away or whatever he decided to do. And maybe with Kirk Cousins, they could have built a Super Bowl team. They certainly had a Super Bowl staff. They had coaches who knew how to win. But, given the way Snyder operated and blowing out, Mike Shanahan after things collapsed after the RG3 2012 season, they went 3-13 the following year, and never had hope. And here we have been wandering in the desert all these years, and hopefully things change under new ownership. Orioles preview coming up. They're closing out their series against the Mets today. They're back to being a first-place team, but there are issues to discuss. We'll get to that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.